This premium is Prime. Here's a look at the Transformers Bumblebee premium collectible figure of Optimus Prime. Standing an impressive 19 inches tall, the Transformers Bumblebee Premium Optimus Prime collectible figure features over 140 points of articulation, including articulated fingers. Additional components include LED illuminated eyes and interchangeable armor pieces that provide the option of displaying the figure as either Earth mode or Cybertron mode Optimus Prime. Comes equipped with LED illuminated ion blaster as seen in the film. Premium Optimus Prime also features die-cast metal frame, adding an incredible weight and tactile finish to the presentation. Before we get a closer look at what could possibly be the largest thing we've ever had a look at here on this channel, I'd like to thank the folks over at Threezero, who did provide this sample of the Transformers Bumblebee Premium Collectible of Optimus Prime himself that we could have a look at in this video. Now, before we get down to looking at the details, and believe you me, there's a lot to cover off here in this review, we're going to first grab the tape measure just to see how tall the figure stands. Now, like I said, this one is pretty big. Looking at it and lining it up as best as I can get, the premium version of Optimus Prime stands 19 inches in height, or the figure is about, I hope you're sitting down for this, 48 centimeters tall. And I know that saying a number like that would be still probably hard to gauge just how tall still Optimus Prime is. So for further comparisons, as we've certainly had a look at this figure in a recent video, I'm going to bring in the DLX Bumblebee. DLX Bumblebee. Now you may remember how tall that figure was. Only goes to about the kneecap on Optimus Prime. Prime himself is at least 2.5, I would say 2.5 times taller than the Bumblebee we looked at before. Still need another comparison? Okay. Here's what Optimus Prime looks like compared next to the MDLX Optimus Prime that we also just recently had a look here. Now, Bumblebee was taller than this Prime. Prime in this case goes, to about the calf on Optimus Prime. And in this case, the smaller MDLX, you probably could fit, I think, 5 of them compared to the full length of what we're getting here with a premium version of Prime. Most, if not all, of the things that come packaged with the figure are swappable armor bits that go onto the figure's body, as it has 2 different distinct looks. As it goes right now, I started the review in his Cybertron look, but just with a few swapping of panels on his shoulders, his forearms, and the front, specifically the front windows of his torso. You can change Prime instead to have his Earth mode look. We're going to get into that more in a second. The only other thing the figure comes included with is very large ion blaster. Now, I already know I don't have very large hands, but just to kind of show you what the blaster looks like next to what I feel to be an average-sized hand. The blaster is what? Almost two hands long. It's been molded here in what I feel to be almost more of a brownish-black plastic. It's not quite full black, but it almost seems like it's got a bit of a brownish tint. There's some additional silver and gold that's been added along the top, and some additional gold that's been added about almost to the point where the actual barrel starts on the blaster. There is a removable magazine. Just attaches on the underside like that. Again, it's got some additional silver that they've added also onto there. There's no additional coloring or anything on the end of it, but that's okay. It's going to be chambered inside of the blaster anyways. Just snap that into place. This does actually illuminate also as well. Inside the barrel, I haven't turned it on just yet, will illuminate a very, very bright light. To access that, both the battery compartment and the on and off switch involve you having still to remove the exact same part. It's this part right here. When you're removing it, don't remove it from the end bit, because that's the most brittle of plastic. Instead, really what you want to do is you want to grab it onto the sides here and just sort of wiggle it back and forth. You don't really have to put much pressure at all to actually have it removed. And inside chambered are 2 AG13 batteries. The figure did not come included with the AG13 batteries. I did end up having to buy those. You need 2 of them. 2 for the blaster. I should say you should need 4. 2 for the blaster and 2 for Prime's eyes, because those also illuminate. Once you do have the batteries in place, again, the on and off switch is located also in here as well. I do wish that they could have found a means to actually have the button somewhere on the outside section of the blaster, so you didn't have to take this off every single time you wanted to turn it on. Like if they had an on and off button somewhere around here, or even somewhere on the bottom also as well, could be a good place to conveniently store a nice little on and off button without you having to pull this off every single time. But there it is right there. I don't know if you guys can hopefully see it or not, just below the 2 batteries, a little on and off switch. I'm going to do my best not to point it directly at you guys, but just to switch that on. You can see how bright that illuminates an orange. It's not quite even an orange light. It's almost more of a reddish orange light. I'm projecting it right now against the surface of my hand. Very, very bright light. And again, to turn it off, you're just going to switch that button off. And then, of course, you're going to want to put this back on. But to do that every single time you decide you want to turn on the ion blaster, I still feel like there should have been an easier method of doing it. When you are putting it back in place, by the way, I'm going to get quite in there so you can see it. There's a little ledge of plastic right there, and there's a little slot right there. You're going to line the 2 up, and then you're just going to fit it back into place. Again, it's nice at least for the battery compartment that I didn't have to unscrew anything. All I did do in the last few moments that I showed you guys how to turn it on and off were the same steps I had to do at the beginning when I had to put the batteries in the first time. All you have to do is, like I said, take this off, which is fine. That's fine for changing the batteries. But I do think, again, like there should have been an on and off switch somewhere located here on the blaster. I would imagine most of the electronics are right here, because this seems the more heavier part. This seems more like hollow plastic. But yeah, they probably could have put an on and off switch or somewhere there. Now, this does fit into Prime's hand, but not as it is right now. The figure comes also included with a couple of these adjustable sort of adapter pieces. What they are is these clips that go onto the actual handle, and these will snap on. And there is a left configuration, and there's a right configuration, depending on which side you want to have it on Prime's hands. When you are deciding to put it onto Prime, first choose the hand that you want to use, and then put the appropriate, like so this one is on this side. When you are putting this on, what you really want to do is put it where this little ledge, can you see it again right there? This little lip of plastic that sticks up, that's the part that's going to be facing inward, and that's going to plug into Prime's hand. I'll show you guys that also in a second. And this just snaps into place. That's crucial. That's what you need in order to hold it. Prime does technically have adjustable articulation in his fingers, but not enough to hold the size of the ion blaster on its own. You do require to add that adjustable clip right here. And you'll see in a second, that's where that's going to fit into Prime's hand. Going to bring the camera in closer so you guys can see how to attach the ion blaster. Before we do that, I did want to point out the fact that Threezero was really able to incorporate some additional articulation into Prime's hands. Traditionally, you do have your regular wrist swivel, which will go back and forth. It's a little bit more limited for the fact that he's got so much bulk on either sides of his forearms, but the figure does have a ball joint for his wrists. In addition to that, though, what was nice to see is that they actually were able to incorporate some additional knuckle joints to each of the fingers, so the fingers are fully articulated. Not only can you actually bring the fingers closer together or fan them out, but each one of the fingers have knuckle joints in 3 different spots. One closest to the palm, one mid-finger, and then one at the very end of the finger. And being the fact that all 4 fingers have the means to do that, you can bring the fingers in and make yourself a fist. You can even have articulation here on the thumb, and you can even have Prime giving thumbs up. Despite for all the articulation that they were able to use for the hands, it's still, though, not strong enough to hold the weight of the ion blaster. So having that adapter clip is very crucial. Just going to bring the fingers out now because we're going to go ahead and attach the ion blaster. And for that, I'm going to maybe bring the camera back just a little bit here too. One thing I did also notice too about attaching the ion blaster, it's really helpful to have the arm down. If you have the arm up and you have the hand up, the angle in which you're trying to line the ion blaster, because keeping in mind, the handle is supposed to go right here, but then you've got this additional extra bit on the end of it. If the hand and arm aren't completely low or leveled like that, I'm going to have a bigger trouble actually attaching the ion blaster. Now, as I said, you did need to use the adapter clip. I've already taken the liberty of adding it here. Now, in case you were curious, you did get 2 versions, right? You get a left and a right. And if you weren't sure which one attaches, the easiest way to do it is just attach it onto the handle. Snaps into place, and obviously you're going to have it on the side that's facing towards the palm, right? Now, when you are putting it in, just to move the fingers away from Prime's palm just for a second, hopefully you guys can actually see. Right in there, there's a little opening slot. just below, I guess, the section in which the fingers are articulated. Right there is a little slot. You're going to take this clip that was on the adapter, and then that clip, that little ledge of plastic that I'm pointing at right now, is going to slot into that slot right there. Now, I have put on the wrong one. I deliberately have put the one that was supposed to go onto the other side of Prime's body on the handle, just to show you. Because if you are looking to put this on and you don't know which way to go, put on one of them, and the moment you try to line the clip up, you're going to notice right away the ion blaster is facing the wrong way. So we're going to go ahead and detach that. Put on the appropriate clip. And again, you're going to want to have it facing towards the handle after all. And you're also going to want to have, just going to make sure I've got this facing the right way. You're also going to want to have the clip facing, or have it further out to the end of the barrel. You don't want to have it, you don't want to have it facing this way. Now, again, when you're lining it up, it's best to have the hand further down. Just move the thumb out of the way, and then you can take the ion blaster and slot it in, providing you're using that adapter clip, and it fits into Prime's hand like that. You see that okay? One thing you can also do too is remove the clip and attach the adapter first, and then try to snap in the handle, which I thought was actually easiest the first couple of times I did it. The problem with it though is while the clip fits better into his hand on its own, without having to actually use the ion blaster being part of it, it actually made things a little bit more difficult when I was then taking the ion blaster. Again, I'm just going to bring it back just a little bit. When I was actually taking then the ion blaster and then snapping it into that adapter, it usually then dislodged it from his hand. So even though I thought I found the easier method of doing it, I'm just going to bring his fingers in here for a second. Though I thought I found the easier method of doing it by actually adding the clip first, in actual fact, I do think it works easiest if you keep the clip onto the handle and just put everything in together. The crucial point, though, is again, I'm hoping to drive home here, is that you really do want to have like at least the end of the ion blaster parallel to the forearm. If you have the forearm further up, then you're going to struggle a lot more trying to get the blaster in place. But as you can see, thank goodness, because of that adapter, you're more than easy enough able to get the ion blaster into Prime's hand. And it does make the figure look that much cooler. There are a couple of things in preparation to getting Prime ready for display that you have to add on to the figure. And it won't matter whether you decide to display him in his Cybertronian look, or you'd much rather display him in his Earth look. Either way, these parts are things that have to go onto the figure either way. We're going to look at these. Now, most of it actually, as I'm picking the figure up and I'm noticing right away just how heavy Prime is, I'm going to move his arm out of the way here. These front sections here are all on ball joints. In fact, everything that you're putting onto Prime is on ball joints, just with the exception of actually the tanks. Those are something that have to go onto the figure's legs. Just holding on to Prime's legs and just removing one of the tanks so you can see. The tank fits in. First of all, it's a really nicely detailed tank done all here in gunmetal gray with some additional washing added in there as well. When you are attaching this, just off to the side, just above his wheel, there's a little half-moon section shape that you're going to take the tank and it's going to slot into place. There's technically no articulation, but you're going to have to add that on both the sides of Prime, as I've already done right here. The other thing that you will have to add, as I'm spinning the figure around here, is these back panel flaps. These flaps attach via ball joints. There's ball joint sections actually on both the sides, and actually some decent articulation too. I'm just going to move one away so you can slightly see a little bit better here. There's actually a really long adjustable post that attaches by ball joint here and a ball socket right here. You have to attach these in, and there's a decent articulation actually. You can move these back and forth, and the ball joints that happen also these back and forth as well. When you are attaching these, you want to have this higher part actually sitting closer to like the middle spine section of his body. The hardest thing actually that had to involve putting onto the figure was these panels right here. Because of the nature of the way their ball joints work, again, you're dealing with a post and a ball joint right here, but these have to snap into place. These are hinges, so these actually can move back and forth, and that will certainly help when it comes to moving the figure all around, especially on his legs. But these are on ball joints, and they're going to move back and forth. But when you are putting that in the first time, it was really hard, and I actually had a real tough time doing it, because every single time I tried to pop it onto the ball joint, this little post, as you can see, it's on a hinge, shifted back and forth. I would try to put it on, and then the post would pop back or go flush against the body, and I would have to pull the post back out again and wiggle it in place. Eventually, though, I succeeded. So those are the parts that have to go onto Prime when you initially get him out of the box. The tanks that go on the sides just above the wheels. These flaps that go onto the sides of his legs. And then just again to spin the figure around, he is quite heavy. These back panels here that are going to go on either side of his spine. Whether again you decide to display the figure in a Cybertronian look or Earth look, either one of those, these things are all the things you're going to want to attach onto the figure before you decide for yourself which way to display Optimus Prime. Before I actually went ahead and showed you guys the two different ways to display Optimus Prime, I did definitely want to spend some time to talk about his head sculpt. I think Threezero has done an incredible job on Optimus Prime, and I can only hope that the camera's doing proper justice on the head sculpt that they've sculpted here for Prime. Now, this is based on his design, of course, from the Transformers Bumblebee movie. A look I prefer much more than what we actually got before in the Michael Bay Transformers franchise. The head sculpt, like I said, is just fantastic on this, and it does feature actually light-up eyes. The neat thing about the Prime eyes, though, is I'm going to go ahead first of all and take the back panel off here. By the way, to access the batteries, I'm just going to grab the back section here of his... Basically, what you want to do is you want to remove this top part here. And this does actually have a button on the inside that's actually going to trigger the button cell batteries. Now, again, like the Ion Blaster we looked at earlier, this takes AG13 batteries, which I've already taken the liberty of adding inside. You don't really actually have to unscrew anything, in fact, on Prime to access that. All you really need to do is just take the top of his helmet off, and that battery compartment is located there right away. Once the batteries, though, are in place, let's go ahead and put Prime's head back in place. Do my best not to turn it on, though, in the process. And once that's in place, what you're going to do is you're going to touch the top of his visor here. And when you press it, it's going to light and illuminate his eyes a very bright blue. You may have not already seen that, but you may notice it again when I go to turn off his eyes. They don't just shut off. In fact, Prime's eyes dim down. You can see it right now. And once again, when I press that button on again, it transitions into turning on. It isn't a stark on and off switch. I don't think I've yet to see this really on a Threezero release. I think it's quite clever, the fact that they were able to do that. Again, we just press it. Prime's eyes dim down, sort of in a dying state, in fact. I think that's super cool, the fact that they were able to incorporate that. Not only is it a good-looking head sculpt, but a good use of the battery compartment, too. I can't stand when companies put battery compartments into larger collectible figures like this, and you have to detach things, you have to unscrew panels. Threezero are doing it right by, like I said, you're literally just taking the top of his helmet off, putting in the batteries, and then from there you can easily turn it on and off without having to take that off again. So I figured what we would do before changing Prime over to his Earth mode, because as of right now he's in his Cybertronian look, is I would show you each of the parts that have to be changed, and I'll show you what the Earth mode version is so you can see the difference between the two. The main one is we're focusing in right now is actually the windshield. This right now is his Cybertronian look, but actually just to bring in his Earth look, you can see the difference between the two. Really, the only difference that I can see, short of just a few little things that they did change, is that the Earth mode does have these additional hooks there on the back, and most notably, it does have the windshield wipers underneath, which the Cybertronian look didn't actually have. Something also that has to be changed on Prime to get the two looks changed over is the front panels here on the tops of his shoulders do have to be changed. Right now, in the Cybertronian look, he does have just a single stripe of white down below here. The Earth mode kind of keeps still the same motif, about the same shape as well, but the Earth mode does also have the additional little kind of light sections there on the bottom, whereas the Cybertronian mode had the little slots. Spinning the figure here to the side so you can see with the smokestacks. The difference of smokestacks, though, is the Cybertronian look does have two white stripes. The Earth mode, as I'm going to put right next to it, smokestacks seem a little bit more, well, Earth in design, a little bit more streamlined here for the Cybertronian look. It also seems as well like the Earth mode version of the smokestacks are a lot darker in gray, darker in that chrome finish, and instead of having actually two white stripes, you only get a single white stripe instead. Another thing that has to be changed on the figure when switching over modes is these guards that go over top of his forearms. Luckily, though, the way they attach is just by magnets. So you can remove one, you can see there's a magnet at the back and a magnet on the front. And this is what he looks like with his regular Earth mode. Now, you don't have to fully commit to this either. If you do kind of like the idea of having these blue guards in place just to add a little bit of additional coloring to his body, by all means, just easily leave them in there. You can see that there's sort of a half circle there on the end of it, that this is actually going to fit just over top of this silver tank. Just line everything up and let really the magnet do all the rest of the work. Again, you don't have to necessarily remove it. If you prefer to keep it on Prime, by all means, leave it on the figure. The last thing you have to do when it comes to switching over the modes is actually down by the tires. These tires do have, again, those little covers that go over top of them. Again, they're easily removable. You're simply just going to detach them by the magnets. You can see very strong magnets on the inside of them, and they're going to attach right there. Very easy, again, to leave on if you'd rather prefer instead to have them on, but I kind of like the idea of leaving them off so you can get the full effect and the full detail that Threezero put into Prime's tires. Having now all said that, let's go ahead and change those parts we just finished discussing. First thing we want to do is remove the front panel here, the windshield, as part of his torso. Now this, I find the first time that I did this, I was a little more worrisome because it's very thin plastic. It attaches via clips, and the clips are kind of hard to see. There's these little circled openings here, and then there's these open, much larger holes down below here. Now, first removing it, there was a little bit of resistance. I ended up having to kind of wiggle it back and forth before finally freeing it. And again, just to remove that and bring in the one that was for the Earth mode, you can see, again, not much different between the two. But still want to be consistent with the look of Prime. I'm going to change it completely over to his Earth mode so you can see the difference between the two. We sort of started the review in Cybertronian mode. We're going to switch things off and finish up the rest of the review in his Earth mode instead. Now, just in case you are curious, there is no Autobot matrix of leadership. There's nothing that actually opens up here on his chest, but they did do some decent detailing, sort of giving you the idea that there could be something in his chest that would open up. Not the case, though, in this case with Prime. Again, when we are putting this back into place, we're just going to line things up, sort of use the actual windshield as your guide, and just snap that into place, just like that. Thing you will want to be careful of, though, is these little side hooks, which we already had looked at earlier. These are very, very close. Too close for comfort when it comes to certainly his shoulders. So when you are rotating his arms, you just want to make sure that those aren't anywhere in the vicinity when you are doing that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to spin the figure around here. And we're going to want to detach this part here, and we're going to want to detach this part right here. Now, they sort of overlap one another. The first thing you will want to do, though, is take the front section here of his shoulders, sort of just wiggle it off. And again, the first couple of times you may do this may seem a little uneasy. What they are is there's these giant circular insert sections. I'm just going to spin the figure around a little bit so you can see. And there's two equally sized rectangular shapes that's just going to fit into that. But again, like the nature of the plastic, as decently detailed as it is, it's a little thinner, so you just want to be a little bit more careful. And then we're going to go ahead and take this section off, and these just detach. There's a little clip right here that actually sits inside. I want to make sure I got it in the right section here. Yeah, sits just inside of here. Do I have it in the right section? I think I do have it in the right section. Clips just, like I said, right into there. And then like the part of the front of the shoulder is going to go over top of that. Again, we're going to remove that, and we're going to change things over into his Earth mode, which again, when we are putting it in place, you want to have, of course, the smokestacks facing forward, and you want to have the back flap facing, obviously, backwards. And again, just to show you the difference between the two, this is the Cybertronian look, this is the Earth look. Definitely do prefer the Earth look just a little bit more. And again, when you are attaching it into place, just going to line everything up here. This is going to slot better. Seems to slot a little bit better and a little more easier, I've noticed, with the Earth mode. I'm going to spin the figure around just a little bit here. And then we're going to take, again, the front panels. Now, this might actually be just a case where I almost would have preferred, I think, the slots a little bit more than these little additional light sources down below. Unfortunately, though, just the way they've designed it, it's going to make things a little bit more difficult. You can't really use this because of the size of the smokestack down below. It's way too wide, and it's going to push against this. You're not going to get a good stable grip. So again, when you are putting in place, these little opening sections here will then slot into. And this is actually a case where with the Earth mode, you're not overlapping anything. It would have been the case when it comes to the Cybertronian look, but this look for Optimus Prime, you're actually instead just going to attach it into place. I want to just make sure, do I have, oh wait, hold on, let me just grab the right, I had the wrong section. Larger rectangle on the one side. It's a good thing, actually, they do give the proper shapes. One on one side, one slightly bigger on the other side. That's the right side. And again, we're just going to line everything up and slot it into place. Just again, remember, when it comes to the Cybertronian look of Optimus Prime, you're going to go back. And again, if we were just to repeat the steps, that's going to plug in first. Then this is actually going to overlap it, kind of finishing off things rather nicely. And you're going to have a more encased look for his shoulder. With the Earth mode, though, on this version of Prime, it's going to be a little bit more open. And actually, to its credit, it gives you more the chance to see more the kind of inner workings of his arm underneath those shoulder pads or shoulder plates. I know we already had done this, but I'm actually going to just do it again here on the camera so you guys can see how this overlaps it. We're just going to detach that, remove that from the top. Take again the smokestacks for the earth mode, snap into place, spin the figure again once again, and now that we know at least which side goes where, that then again plugs into the front of it. Line everything up. And there you go. The only thing, one other thing I did want to mention though about the smokestacks for Earth Mode Prime is that because they don't have the overlapping sense of the front panel kind of covering over the front or the side where the smokestacks are, the smokestacks rely a little bit more on that clip to stay in place. They're a little more loose. They don't stay as well in place as the Cybertronian look for Prime. But again, I think it's the look of the two I prefer much more. Yeah, why not? Why don't we fully commit to this? We're going to go ahead and take these panels off. Again, we already know how easy these are. They just simply remove by magnets. And again, we're going to spin the figure around to the other side and just remove it from the other side as well. And then really the only last thing to do is remove those covers over the wheels. And we've got ourselves a finished Earth Mode Optimus Prime. Just doing the last finishing steps of taking off the wheel covers. Similar to the gauntlets on the arms, you can easily just leave these on if you want to. And because they are magnets, at any given point, if you decide you want to have those back on Optimus Prime, they're quite easy to attach back in place. With Prime now fully converted over to Earth Mode, we can spend a little bit more time talking about the work that Threezero put into this piece. One last time for anyone that had maybe missed it, we can go ahead and turn on his eyes once again via the little button that's above his eyes. Again, it looks so cool to have his eyes illuminate like that. Just again to spin this around so hopefully you guys can see all the work that Threezero put into this piece at such a large-sized Prime. They certainly did not skimp on anything when it comes to his finer features. Again, my only criticism as I'm spinning this around is just the issues I really have with the smokestacks. The smokestacks, again, just being the fact that they only use just a clip alone, doesn't seem like it's stable enough to keep in place. I think in this case, they probably could have either used like a magnet, or they probably could have put a secondary clip a little bit lower down. Something in which the smokestacks could have attached more so to, instead of just relying on just that one clip alone. Because it actually doesn't even so much clip, as it seems more just to slide into place. Even adding just a little bit more pressure, which is something I really don't want to do for the risk that I may break that clip. I just wish like the smokestacks would stay in just a little bit better. Now the coloring on this is so classic Prime. Not only do you have the additional red, like the majority of the figure is either the red, the silver, or the blue. But again, you've got all this nice additional washing of not only like the additional silver that you can see kind of scratched on the end of the visor that comes down over front of the windshield. But again, he's got some additional kind of tarnished areas that he's added also to the white. So nothing really does look pristine here for Prime. Again, we're going to kind of pick the figure up here for a second. It might be a little bit more easier to see like the head sculpt once again. Now, for me, again, I prefer the look of Optimus Prime from the Transformers Bumblebee. It just looks more like a classic Generation 1 Optimus Prime. The nice use of both the dark gunmetal grays, coupled with also that navy blue that they used. The gray actually seems a little bit more of a matte finish. In fact, actually, like the blue that they use not only does seem a little bit more like it's a purplish blue, but it seems also a little bit more shinier as well. They've added some nice additional scratching of that silver added in there as well. Even like the side fins, I guess the little side ears that he has for his helmet, also nicely painted in there as well. And kind of hopefully able to show you guys all this as well. Just the intricate work that they sculpted into his neck. Nothing necessarily limits the head articulation on Prime. In fact, he actually has two places of articulation, which we'll talk more about in a second. He's got one really at the base of the neck that attaches, of course, to the inside of his head cavity. And then he's got a secondary one actually at the base of his neck. So like between the two, there's really a lot of articulation mileage to go with. I'm going to go ahead and just turn this off because I just don't want his eyes to... There you go. I just love, again, the way that that transitions down. Downs, powers down. Nice detail work again there on the front windscreen. You've got now, because we've switched over to the Earth mode, the additional windshield wipers down below. Kind of would have been nice to see that they could have had a panel where it would have opened up the inside of his chest. But again, for how elaborate this figure is anyways, I don't really think it necessarily needed it. Things that you'll really be able to pick up on as we get a little bit closer in on the figure is, again, all the little pulleys and things that would really allow this robot to move freely. Things like his arms, for example, are just as detailed as the rest of the figure's body. Now, again, you will want to be careful when it comes to moving his arms, yeah, because unfortunately, because those smokestacks just don't stay well enough in place. I've already had it a couple of times already where I'm moving his arms about, and these things have fallen off way too frequently for my liking. Nice little touch of detail, too, that we can also talk a little bit more about when it comes to the articulation, is this extra little sunken-in section for his forearm. Really clever the way they've done that. They've not only recreated the design that I would have imagined he would have had in the movie, but it made it in such a way that when you are moving his elbow, let me just bring it back a little bit so you can see, that section actually recesses in, and it sits inside the cavity of his forearm. And then when you have his arm straight again, it pops back out. I think that's incredible, the fact that they were able to do that. Again, you got some really nice detailing on the interior of his arm. All the little levers, little pulley systems. You can kind of see like cables that would have been spinning around on this figure as he would have been, this character when he would have been moving around. Got some really nice detailing there also on his forearms, just like the inner workings of just his bicep section alone, just how much work somebody would have taken to design this from scratch. And again, for Threezero, so talented for them to replicate this as an actual figure. It's really hard to kind of pinpoint. Would it be even hard to understand how big this figure is? It's the size of a small toddler, so it's a little bit more harder for me to kind of get in there and show you guys like the inner workings of everything. Looking at this, it actually kind of reminded me of like of a smiling face, like the two eyes on the back kind of replicates the same sort of detailing that he has on the forearms and sort of a smile right here. Kind of looks like a big smiling clown. But yeah, again, super, super impressed on Optimus Prime here. We're going to spin this around so you can see it certainly from the front as well. There's the grill. The front section of the grill there of his torso. The nice use of, again, of those dark silvers, the dark gunmetal grays. Even like, again, like the red seems not unscathed, certainly by the additional wear and tear that they've added in there as well, like all the additional silver. I like that also that the coloring that they went with, too, is a nice dark burgundy. I think in a case like this, both Prime in the movie and Prime as an actual collectible, too bright of a red, I think would have taken a little bit away from the realism of it, as realistic as certainly the leader of the Autobots could be. But I do like the way they've gone with a more dark kind of crimson red in this case. Detailing nicely done here on the legs. Again, you've got the dark wash of added the black in there. There's some additional yellow also in there as well. Can kind of see on the interior of his thighs. He's got, again, a couple little pulley systems there done also here in orange, little pistons, I should say, also done here in orange there on the side of his torso. And as we get that a little bit lower down to his very oversized feet. Did I also mention to you guys that this guy is mostly made of die-cast metal? You can certainly feel it when you're picking this figure up in hand. Again, you got some really nice work on Threezero's part on the interior of Prime's legs. Again, all the little pulleys and pistons and all the things that would allow this Autobot leader to move around. Just an incredible, incredible looking piece. And we haven't even looked at the articulation of this guy yet. Premium Prime does have a lot of articulation going for him, although the numbers sort of have been exaggerated by the fact that each one of the fingers, keeping in mind, have 3 points of articulation. So if you look at just the fingers and the hands alone, that's what already like 15 points of articulation times 2. So that's 30 right there. Nonetheless, though, let's have a look at the articulation on Prime. We're going to start things first with his head sculpt, which is on a ball joint. So not only can you move it back and forth this way, you move it up. And by moving it up, that's as far up as really you can get him. You can also have him looking down as well. And in addition to that, as we had already looked at and discussed, he does also have a socketed joint at the base of the neck. So you can have the neck actually a little higher up if you prefer, or you can have it a little bit lower down as well, as if Prime is mourning. The torso, first of all, the torso, I'm just going to kind of move these side struts out of the way for his waist. His top waist section, just the waist alone actually, is on a ball joint, so you can rotate that all the way around. But like this part right here, which is probably like the hardest thing to gain access to, is actually also on a ball joint. Now, when you are moving it, though, the only thing I would stress, though, as I'm going to do my best to kind of hold the top of his shoulder, like see right here, he's got one bit of articulation point here at the bottom of his waist, or just where the waist now starts. And he's also got a secondary ball joint at the top, just kind of like right around this area here. Just the hardest thing about that, though, is trying to get access to it, because while you're doing it, you just don't want to hit it. You don't want to hit this or break the front windscreen. We just have, again, the articulation there in the top of the torso. In addition to that, I'm going to just spin the figure around here just a little bit. This whole back spine section is basically on like an accordion system. First of all, again, you're going to want to make sure that these flat panels are sort of out of the way, because if you are moving anything on the figure, especially his waist, you really would want to make sure, like I didn't do there, really want to make sure that these are kind of out of the way. So like this whole front section basically accordions down. I'm just going to take his torso and, like I said, just bring it forward. As you already had seen, though, I mean, these smokestacks are notorious for falling off. But again, like you can have Prime in a more injured look by actually having the back of his spine actually being able to, it basically just folds like this. There's many different links that are all connected together, and it allows literally Prime to kind of crunch his whole front torso forward. going to go back and retrieve his smokestack in a second. His arm does allow for rotation. Now, the arm, I did notice, was tight. There goes the other smokestack. His arm is on a tight joint, but it does allow the arm to rotate all the way around. You can take the arm and also hinge it out. And if you can see there as well, he has sort of an inner working socket joint that allows the forearm to come out at a much higher range. So you can almost give kind of prime a high range clothesline if you wanted to. The figure does also have a bicep swivel, which you can swivel back and forth this way. The figure, as already mentioned, has quite a range of motion when it comes to his articulation in his forearm. Again, being the fact that that section that we had already looked at, which I'm just going to tip the figure back a little bit so you can see, because that actually recesses inside of his forearm, it allows Prime for really high range of motion. It isn't so much a double hinge on his elbow. Rather, it's sort of more of a continuous motion where Prime is able to articulate his arm at quite a high reach. And as we already mentioned too, the hands themselves are also on ball joints, so you can rotate the wrist back and forth. You are going to be a little more hung up, just because there are parts on the ends of his arm that, as you are rotating his hand, you're going to kind of feel a bit of the plastic rubbing up against that. Just want to be careful that you don't chip the paint in the process. And as we already mentioned also as well, the figure does have articulated hinge joints in his fingers. 1, 2, and 3 times 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then he also has 3 points actually, on his thumb. A ball joint right here, a knuckle joint just above that, and about midpoint on his thumb. There's also articulation there as well. As for the lower part of the figure, we're going to go ahead and first lift these flaps up, being thankful for, of course, the fact that they are on ball joints after all. You can also bring those up, bring this one up, and then we're just going to spin this around, mindful of his arm, and we're going to go ahead and lift these up also as well. And with enough clearance now made available for his legs, you can take Prime's legs and split them out. Again, there goes the smokestacks. I should have never really put the smokestacks back in place. Prime can almost pull off a full effective splits. Pretty impressive for a figure of this size. You can take the legs and also bring them forward and bring them back. Again, we're just going to hold on to the figure in order to do that. There's no swivel there for obvious reasons, just on the top, but at least you get a swivel out this way. And you can, again, you bring the legs forward also as well. For Prime's knees, you can again just take the leg and hold on to it here. The figure does have 2 sections of joints. He has a joint right up here, just below where the blue now starts there on his kind of the tops of his boots. And then he also has sort of a track system here for the secondary joint. What's interesting, though, is when you're looking at the side, I'm hoping that I'm able to show this in this, when you are separating, you sort of get this separate section revealed. It's sort of like inner springs now revealed on the inside of his leg. Just the attention to detail in this guy is absolutely incredible. And then in addition to that, he's also got a joint right here. So he's got a joint here, he's got a joint right here, here, and down below here, giving you quite a considerable range of motion. The last thing the figure has as well, if that already wasn't enough, he has an ankle pivot that can go back and forth this way. The figure's feet can move back and forth this way. And the figure also has toe articulation. Toe articulation. For those curious, in case wanted to see the underside of Prime's feet, that's what they look like right there. Again, all heavy metal. You can feel it. It's cool to the touch. Like I said, the figure does have quite a lot of articulation. Unfortunately for its size, it wasn't a case where I was really having the easiest time of showing everything here in frame. But believe you me, when you have a Prime of this size and stature in your collection, people are going to start taking notice. Compared perhaps with some of the other Threezero Transformer figures that have been released in previous years, Prime may be a little more limited in his accessory count. If you don't include the ion blaster that the figure comes included with, really all the other things that the figure has are things that can be swapped out on the figure. Panels and flaps that can convert him from his Cybertronian look to his Earth mode instead. I prefer the Earth mode of Prime, but unfortunately by going that route, it does sacrifice some of the stability with the smokestacks, something we talked about at least in this review. The smokestacks, I think, look nicer in Earth mode, but because he doesn't have the overlapping flap of the front of the shoulder pad or shoulder plate, there's nothing really to keep the smokestacks in place. I still think that they could have probably incorporated a secondary peg system maybe further down at the bottom of the smokestack that could plug into his forearm or plug into his bicep section, because that's not really a part that I think moves on the figure anyways, that I think there could have been some place, a little more of a stable place where they can attach the smokestacks. I think they fall off, like I said, a little bit too frequently. Despite that, though, it is probably what I would consider one of the best Transformer figures that we've ever gotten from Threezero. And I'm not just saying that by its size, but just more the detailing and the work that they put into this. Not only that, but I love the way that they've also incorporated the illuminated eyes. Those LED eyes not only are easy to gain access to, easy to change out the batteries, but I love the way it powers up and powers down. Many of the times when we do look at light up eyes on any of these collectibles from not only Threezero but other companies as well, turning on and off the switch, it's a stark change. It's on or it's off. There's nothing really in between. Prime is in between though, because again, it powers down. And I think that's so cool the way that they were able to do this. If it is certainly a case where you have the space available, because that's one of the things that go along with premium Prime like this, it's not only a premium price, but the premium size of him as well. He's not going to be able to fit in all collectible spaces. If you have a smaller space available or smaller shelves that you currently have a lot of your figures out, Prime's not going to be able to fit well on a shelf like this. If you do have certainly the space available, this I think is a figure I would rather have displayed on more of a tabletop than on a shelf. Because on a shelf, there's no way I'm going to be able to properly display him and with really the dignity and the way he needs to be deserved to be displayed. Because even like right now, having him displayed and spinning around here on my turntable, I can't even have him in a kneeling pose. That's one thing I think I'd like to have Prime doing and displayed with in my collection, is maybe him down on a knee, extending out one gentle hand. Again, really nice work, really nice work on Threezero's part. What do you guys think of Optimus Prime, the premium collectible version of Optimus Prime? Is this a figure that you would consider be picking up and adding maybe to your collection space? That is to say, if you have the space available for a figure of this size. A big thank you once again to the folks over at Threezero that did provide this sample of Premium Prime that we can have a look at in this review. If you guys are new here and you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, first of all, if you enjoyed this video and you don't mind sending a little like my way, if you enjoyed this video, hit it with a like. If you loved this video and enjoying the content that you're seeing here on this channel, hit the subscribe button so you're always going to be aware of when new videos are popping up. Hitting the bell notification also is crucial. It will always give you alerts of whenever new videos are here popping up on the channel. Because keeping in mind, we are always posting on a regular basis. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And would you even believe Friday? 5 times a week? That's unheard of. 5 times the week is normally the norm here on this channel. Usually 2 times a day also as well. So expect usually on a regular basis 10 videos coming out from the person that's behind the camera here. Again, lots of videos coming your way. At the very also end of this video, we'll be popping up a playlist of all the other things I've looked at for Threezero over the years. So if you are curious, and maybe this is the first time really getting a good feel for what Threezero are putting out, and would like to see future examples of some of the things that companies have been making, check out my playlist that will be popping up at the very end of this video. And of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.